be obvious to anyone who's watched a lot of my videos, but I've been a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan ever since I was a little kid. And I was lucky enough to grow up in that kind of first boom of Sonic merchandise where there was just so much stuff that you could get. There were the games, obviously, but there was also the animated series, 2 animated series actually. The excellent comic series by Fleetway, there were action figures, there were fast food tie-ins, cereal tie-ins, there were clothes, foodstuffs, novels, you name it, you could get it with Sonic on it. But today I'm here to talk to you about one of my absolute favourite pieces of Sonic merch that I had when I was a kid, and one that I still really love today. It's a puzzle book entitled Where's Sonic? Now, this should maybe be obvious from the title, but Where's Sonic is a parody, homage, rip-off, I'm not entirely sure, of the Where's Wally books, or Where's Waldo, if you're outside of the UK. Those puzzle books where you're given a very detailed image and you have to find a bunch of small characters or objects inside. And this is that exact same premise, but with Sonic the Hedgehog, and therefore better. I loved this book when I was a kid. There must have been a period of time where I just read this every single day for weeks on end when I was little. And I'm surprised that it's in as good condition as this is. It's still pretty much brand new. The spine's a little worn, I suppose, but it still looks pretty good. I actually used to take this into school when I was a kid, when I was in primary school. I would take this in and we would play Sonic the Hedgehog. At break time we would pretend to be all the characters and we'd go on all sorts of adventures, and we would actually use this book as a map for our games because it has sort of all of the zones from the game and stuff. So we would pretend that this was actual maps of like the chemical plant zone and stuff. I really love the artwork in this book, but I realise sort of now with hindsight that the scenes aren't that great, whereas Where's Wally books would have really detailed scenes with a lot of visual jokes and a lot of actual action going on, and they were quite cool, believable scenes. This basically takes a sort of background and then just throws, 100,000 badniks at it. It's basically just a clutter of badniks, just taking up all the space, and then you find Sonic and all that hiding behind them at some point. So, yeah, I guess it's not great. It does look like a kind of obvious clutter when you're looking at it, rather than a kind of genuine inhabited scene, but it is all hand-drawn and the artwork's really vibrant and looks really cool, despite the fact that it's, not maybe as good quality as those Where's Wally books. Each of the images is taken from Sonic 2, so you go through the Emerald Hill Zone, Chemical Plant Zone, Aquatic Ruin Zone, right up to the Death Egg Zone at the end, which was always my favourite picture because it had Metal Sonic or Silver Sonic in it. I always really thought this one was cool. And Dr. Robotnik, but to make it a little harder, you also have to find 1 Chaos Emerald, 2 Star Posts, 2 TV monitors, and 10 golden rings. I always found that quite difficult, like getting the extra bonus stuff, and I would always kind of go through this book not really bothering. I would just find Sonic, Tails and Eggman and sort of move on to the next stage. When I was a kid, this was one of my absolute favourite pieces of merch, and I guess it must have sold pretty well because they released the sequel. The sequel was entitled Where's Sonic Now, and yeah, it was pretty much exactly the same. The artwork was a little different. I guess they got somebody else in to do it, and it's perhaps even more cluttered than the first book, but I think it's a little more dynamic looking at it now. Some of the zones sort of are a little more interesting rather than just a kind of flat perspective on the zone. There's one where like there's a giant spaceship riding through it, or there's a rocket taking off. The Ice Cat Zone one is pretty impressive because it's got these kind of towering blocks of ice with all these penguin bots kind of standing at the top of it. Yeah, it's still kind of cluttered, and I don't think the colours work as well in this. I think the colours are a little more garish rather than the first book, which has quite a natural kind of nice palette to it. This one's just a little too all over the place for me. But yeah, it's still a really nice book. Once again, you have to find Sonic, Tails and Robotnik, but because this is a sequel, and of course every Sonic sequel has a new character in it, this time around you also have to find Knuckles the Echidna in every stage. And then of course you've got the extra bonus stuff. You have to get 10 rings, 1 pair of sneakers, 1 Chaos Emerald, and 2 Energy t-shirts, whatever those are. I'm not entirely sure. Energy t-shirts. Those never made it into the games. But yeah, this is a pretty cool sequel to the first book. Really nice artwork again. Like I said, not as nice in my opinion as the first book, but still a pretty cool thing. But hey, there's more to come, because apparently the UK wasn't the only place to get these kind of books. In America, they got their own one. Look and Find Sonic the Hedgehog. This one's a little bigger than the UK one, and it's a hardback. And rather than being based on the UK continuity, it's based on the US one, which had kind of more focused around the Sat-Am cartoon than the eventual Archie Comics publication. So in this book you have to find Sonic and Tails and Robotnik again, but you also have to find characters from the Sat-Am TV show. So there's Princess Sally, Rotor, Bunny Rabbit, Antoine, Snively and Swapbots in every stage. It's interesting that the style's a little all over the place, because Sonic and Tails kind of keep their models from the game. Sally and Antoine and all that are obviously from Sat-Am, but the version of Robotnik that they use is actually the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog model, so it's kind of a little all over the place in terms of style. But the artwork in this book is probably the best out of all of these. This is the one that's definitely closest to the Where's Wally style. You know, you have those really detailed images that the Where's Wally books had, and there's a lot of kind of visual jokes and a lot of action going on. It's a much more engaging image in a way, I suppose, and all the kind of little original background characters and all the cool little situations that are brought up here. It's just great. It's a book that, whereas you couldn't really do this with the other two books, you could just spend, you know, hours just poring over all of these images, just taking in all of the kind of cool little visual jokes and stuff. It's also a lot like Where's Wally in that every stage or every image has its own kind of unique things to find. So whereas you have to find the freedom fighters in every picture, each one also has different things. So the first one has like a flashlight and lunchbox and things like that you have to find, and then the next one it's all historical stuff, so there's statues and treasure and suits of armour. The next one has fish that you have to find, a manta ray, a great white shark, starfish and all those sorts of things, leading up to some pretty cool things towards the end, and even at the end a couple of extra characters from the show like Mutsky and Uncle Chuck make appearances in this book, which is pretty cool. There's also a page at the back for even more things that you can go through and find once you're done. So yeah, this is a really nice book. I only got this recently and I haven't even spent the time that I want to just poring over these images, because the pictures in this are so nice. But yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of going and just spending those hours just poring over these pictures, because they're just really cool. I kind of wish that we'd got a book like this here as well, but what can you do? And so that's it. Those were the books that were released when I was a kid, and released over in America. So that was pretty cool. This was fun. Oh wait, no, there's more. There's this one too. Oh, there's this one too. Where's Sonic: A Search and Find Adventure was only released a couple of years ago, and I was really excited when this was announced that this was coming out, because I loved the original Where's Sonic book when I was a kid, obviously. And when I heard there was a new one, I knew that I had to get it straight away. I pre-ordered it on Amazon, and when I arrived, it was shit. Yeah. Unlike the other three books, where it's beautiful hand-drawn artwork, game, like the promotional artwork for the game, which is cool in its way. I mean, the images from a distance look kind of cool. It's the same kind of style as the first Where's Sonic book, where it's just a scene that's just cluttered up with a bunch of badniks and a bunch of characters. The problem is, though, that because these are already pre-made renders, they don't fit into the background, and they look like a really bad Photoshop. They look like the characters are just dumped onto the background. There's no real care gone into like whether the characters are in scale with the background or whether they match the lighting, and it can lead to some really terrible looking moments, like this moment here where they're standing in this loop here, and they're so badly photoshopped onto it. Plus, because there's only so many CGI renders for all of these characters, especially the badniks, you're basically just given the same badnik over and over again, whereas in the original Where's Sonic, each badnik was hand-drawn and looked unique, even if they were all kind of doing similar things. This is literally the same image, just copied and pasted all over the place, and it just looks awful. It was really disappointing when this came out that it was just so cheaply produced, though I suppose it is the only Where's Sonic book to have Big the Cat in it. So that's a plus. It does get a bonus point for that. I will give it that. And that's that for this video. I hope you enjoyed this little kind of tour, this little look through these old books. The two Where's Sonic books are pretty easy to find second hand on Amazon and on eBay and stuff. This American one is a little harder to find if you're in the UK. I'm not sure how easy it is to get in the US. And don't buy this one. Yeah, let me know what you guys thought of these books, if you're going to maybe hunt them down or if you had them yourself when you were a kid. Like I said, I just love these books, so I was really excited to get a chance to talk about them with you. Let me know what you think in comments below. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe and all that stuff. I'll see you guys next time, and of course, don't forget to have a beard. Bye bye.